Okay, welcome everybody to Virtual Coffee Brownbag Edition. Today, I think Friday, 12th of March, 2021. For those who are watching this who are new, Virtual Coffee's mission, of course, to be a welcoming tech community that allows room for growth and mentorship at all levels and create meaningful opportunities for learning, leadership, and contributions for everyone. One of the ways we do that is we have these brown bag sessions where we allow members to come up and just speak to the other members about a topic that interests them or something they want to share or something they want to teach us. Today, we have Jonathan Yeong, a senior software engineer originally from Australia, now currently based in Seattle. He's primarily a back-end developer, but he's enjoying re-entering the crazy world of front-end development, loves giving back to communities and empowering others in their developer journeys. He says without a supportive community, he wouldn't be where he is today. Hash browns are his guilty pleasure food. We definitely have some questions about that afterwards. Right now, Jonathan is going to give us a talk on module and no module based bundlers, which is something that I know nothing about. So I'm sort of like super excited to hear what he has to share with us. And without further ado, let's jump into it. Take it away, Jonathan.
Cool. Hey, everyone. Let me share my screen. Yeah, this one. Cool. Can you guys see these slides? I'm just going to hide this Zoom window. Oh, gosh. What am I doing? Where is my mouse? Okay, hold on. Whoa. Okay. Let's do that. Okay, cool. We're in it. Let's do it. So hi, my name is Jonathan Yeong, and yes, I'm going to talk about module and no module bundlers. So this talk is a bit, it's for the people that have never heard of these tools before. So if you have heard of these tools and maybe you're an expert in these, please jump in and correct me if I say anything wrong or just add more color to what I say. And feel free to ask questions and interrupt me at any point. I'm totally fine with that. So in this presentation, we are going to cover what these tools are. So what are module and module bundlers? We're going to talk about why you might want to use them and then how they work. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll have an idea of the pros and cons of each of these tools and maybe how they might fit into your development workflow. So let's just dive straight into module bundlers. So there's a few module bundlers out there. I've just picked a couple on this slide. So we have Parcels one, Rollup, ESBuild is kind of the new kid on the block. It's not quite production ready yet. And then Webpack seems to be kind of the most popular module bundler of them all. That's actually the one that we use at work. And the whole reason I started going down this journey is because I kept seeing the term Webpack everywhere and I wanted to know more about it. So diving straight into what these things are, well, to put it really simply, or like to kind of abstract away a lot of the complexities, a module bundler will take in JavaScript files or JavaScript modules, bring them together, perform some sort of optimization, and then it will output a kind of production ready golden JavaScript file that is loaded onto the browser. But it doesn't just take in JavaScript, it can handle many types of files. And I'm going to pick on Webpack here because it is the biggest one that I've seen. Oh, and also I can't see the chat, so just interrupt me, Kirk, if something comes up. So Webpack will handle CSS, images, fonts, and JSON, XML, like data types like that. This is pretty similar to how other module bundlers work as well. Seems to be a general trend. The whole reason we want to be able to ingest these types of files is so we can use them in our JavaScript files. And we would use them using these import statements that you've probably seen before if you use like React or any of those kind of front-end frameworks. So here we can import icon PNG, we can import a CSS file into our JavaScript and import some data from data.json. Now, how the module bundler does this imports, it actually takes these files, builds them to some static path, and then it will populate those import statements using that static path. And that seems like a lot of work to just use a file. So why might we want to do this? Well, if we come back to our JavaScript example and assume that we don't have a module bundler, well, we might want to do something like this, where we have a main.js file, we're calling some JavaScript function called confetti.render. And then we will have to make sure that we incorporate that confetti JS file into our HTML. So in the second box, we see there's 2 script options. This script ordering matters because we need to ensure that the confetti is available for us to call the .render on. And this is what we call global scope. And you can imagine as we get more and more JavaScript files, this is going to get really hard to manage. And the dependency tree that we'll have to mentally manage can get super complex. And that's where module bundlers come in. They kind of abstract away a lot of this information. If we were to use something like Webpack, for example, we can do something like this instead. So we can import confetti generator from a confetti.js node module, and then call the confetti.render as is. Instead of main.js, we'll have this in a index.js file, and then we can include a main.js script. And that main.js script is the result of the module bundler bundling and doing its thing. So let's dig a little bit deeper, because I kind of went through like how module bundlers kind of work a little bit, just a really high level of them bringing things together and what that import statement actually looks like, but what's actually going on behind the scene. So I'm going to jump into some live coding, and this is always going to end well. So we'll see how it goes. But I have a Webpack demo.
You brave soul. Good on
I
you.
know. I see things in chat. Should I look at this? Oh, no, okay, cool.
We'll interrupt you with questions. We're just
Okay.
commenting.
Great.
Hey, John, just one suggestion, maybe bump the font in the editor like once or twice up. You can do a command plus plus if you want.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah, actually, yeah, maybe command plus.
Jonathan, if you don't want to do it permanently like that, do Command Shift P.
Yeah.
And then type zoom in.
Oh, cool. Cool. Is that big enough? Is that too big?
It's good.
Okay, cool. So I know the file names are a bit small, so I'll just mention what those file names are. So in this Webpack demo, it is pretty small. All it has is this index.js file. And this index.js file imports the confetti generator, which we saw, imports some CSS, and imports a function from another JavaScript file. It calls that function in this append. So all it's really doing is appending some text onto the DOM, and then it's rendering this confetti function that we saw. Our hello world.js file contains 2 functions, hello world and foobar. We aren't using foobar, but we are using hello world, and it's just going to say hello from Webpack, because it's not really hello world, but you get the gist. And then index.html, all it's doing is loading main.js, which is the resulting bundle after the module bundler runs, and then a couple of IDs just so we can kind of attach something onto the DOM. It's not a very good application, but we can see it running. If I start this up, it will start my Webpack dev server, and then I see hello from Webpack and some confetti. The CSS styles that text, so it's nice and pink. But let's dig into what that actually looks like with the main.js bundle. So I'm going to inspect this element here. And this is probably really hard to read, so let me fix that for her. Okay. And let's bump that up. Okay, so this is, well, I guess it's still hard to read because right now this is just using eval. So what Webpack will do with this main.js file is it converts all of your JavaScript into a string, and then it will call eval on that string, which will evaluate that JavaScript. And if we kind of find hello world, hello world, we had it. Okay, you can see that it's being brought into the bundler at this point here. And you'll see a bunch of this stuff here that is really hard to read. So let's fix that. We can turn on something called source maps. So going back to Webpack, go back to the source code. There's a Webpack config, which lists out a bunch of the things I just said. So we have the index.js as entry point. The bundle output is main.js. And then we can turn on inline source maps, restart the server, and then hopefully we can see something a little bit better. Oh, cool. Okay, so this already looks a lot nicer. So you can see here it's bringing confetti. And then if we scroll down, that's the CSS loader here. So Webpack has this idea of loaders to actually bring in these other different types of files. Other module bundles, like I think Parcel, already handles CSS out of the box, so you don't need to worry about bringing in a loader. And then what I'm looking for is Hello World. Cool. So you can see the Hello World code here. This is our function here. And then we have a couple of things called Harmony Export. So this is the Webpack's magic comment saying like, hey, these functions are being exported. Like Hello World is being exported. So is foobar. But what's interesting here is that this is our development bundle. It doesn't always look like that for production. For example, this is not minified and it's not optimized for production. So what we could do is switch over to a production kind of mode and then run the whole build bundle thing again to see an output. I'm not sure if that is useful, but what I do want to show is if I do switch this, well, actually, hold on. Yeah, let's just run production. Let's see what happens.
John, does it automatically minify on production?
It should. Oh, I need to actually run the right production command. Nope.
Yeah, it should make they've simplified Webpack configurations since version 4, I think. So if you just say mode production, it has a bunch of sensible defaults for production.
Okay.
And same for development mode.
Yeah, because whenever I inspect a site, it's like always the minified code. So you're like showing this stuff and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty. And that's never what I see.
Yeah, there's a whole host of like configurations that you can do with Webpack. And I'm running this in production and I'm wondering why it's not minifying.
Is it line 17 where it's most been set as development again?
Yeah, you're totally right.
Cool.
Catch, Mike. Good catch.
Good catch, Mike. Thank you.
Teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, so everything still works. All right, we're expecting this to be minified. Cool. And it's minified.
Yeah, that looks a lot more familiar.
Yeah. So I'm going to print this. And then if I search for hello world, hello from Webpack, so I can see the hello from Webpack function is there, but if I try and find hello from foobar, it should not exist, assuming that this is not case sensitive. Hello from foobar. Okay, so this is really cool because there's some optimizations being done with Webpack build. We're going to switch back to the slides. Before I do, is there any questions? Should I play around with anything else? I didn't actually, I should show you something. You can reload the page really easily. Actually, I'm not sure if you can do that in production mode. Maybe in development mode, you can switch it over.
Yeah, you need the development server running, so that's why it's not hot reloading.
Yes, and I had to turn on this hot true kind of option here. So npm start. I love how I just forget how to type when we do live coding stuff. I can see it rebuilds really fast, which is nice. If we have a look at all this stuff here, we can see it caches some modules. And then whenever I change this file, it compiles and then rebuilds that one file after doing that compilation step. So that is what we call hot module reload, which essentially means you don't need to refresh the page. You can change something in your code and it'll automatically update on the site. And I think that's all I had to show.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you know how often Webpack releases updates? I know when I learned it, I took like 2 days to go through and learn it. And then like a couple months later, they changed a lot. And I was just like, what? So
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure. Maybe Nick might have a better sense of like the history and the timing of releases.
I think they just make releases when they think it's ready.
Yeah.
The thing that you encountered, Megan, is probably you were probably using Webpack 3 maybe at the time, and they made a lot of changes when they moved to Webpack 4. So they have a migration guide and stuff. I had to do it for them, so it was just a bit of work. But then I think the way things are, like Jono's showing now, I think they're keeping it like that. There's newer features coming, but I believe the configuration is pretty stable now.
Cool.
that's good to know.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, and I will say, actually, let's just move on to the next slide. So I want to talk about the dependency graph. So the whole import from X package or XCSS or whatever, that builds up our kind of dependency tree. So we do that through the import or older kind of require syntax. So Webpack can leverage a lot of the import statements that I think newer browsers support to kind of speed up a lot of these like imports and optimizations, and it kind of transpiles or converts that code into something that older browsers can also run as well, and that's with those require statements. So if we have a look at our dependency graph of our really simple playground app, we can see that index.js depends on confetti, app, CSS, and hello world function in the hello world.js. This isn't really that interesting. If we have a look at create React app instead, you can see it builds like a different sort of dependency tree, and you can analyze kind of your Webpack stats in this site here. I'll send the links out at the end of the talk. You can run like some sort of stats to generate a JSON they can upload to this site. It's kind of more of a demonstration thing. I can't imagine you'd want to use this if you have lots of dependencies. I'm sure Forum is like pretty huge in that sense, but it's a nice way to visualize what this looks like whenever you have, when you try to figure out like what the dependency looks like. So I talked about dependencies and I talked about optimizations. So there's other optimizations that module bundling gives you. So minification, for example, you can run a minification step through the production, as we saw, that reduces the file size that gets loaded onto the browser. We have something called cache busting. So anytime you change some CSS, a module bundle like Webpack will always make sure that it's the newest CSS being loaded onto the browser to make sure that any changes you make will always be shown. There's something called tree shaking. So when I was trying to find foobar in that production ready module bundle, production ready bundle size thingy, I couldn't actually find foobar, and that's where tree shaking comes in. And then there's something called code splitting, which is really like load it when you need it. And a module bundle will split up your main bundle into what is needed at the time versus what's needed a little bit later. I'm actually just going to dive into one of these tools, one of these optimizations, and that's going to be tree shaking. So what is tree shaking? Definitely not this. Tree shaking is just a way to remove unused code, also called like dead code. So in this example with the hello world, and we have foobar, if in development we turned on the ability to like do the tree shaking, we could see when we run our Webpack server, the file might look something a little bit like this. So we have the Harmony exports, which we saw before, but then you might notice this unused Harmony export foo bar. So what Webpack does is runs through all your dependencies and figures out what isn't being used. So at this point, it knows that foo bar isn't being used anywhere in the code, and that it marks it as, hey, this is probably safe to remove. Now, there's limitations to this. Like, for example, if you have a polyfill or some global state that always needs to be loaded, but potentially isn't required in any certain file, Webpack might not know whether or not you can remove it. That's something called side effects, and that you can mark a file as side effect free to be able to clean up the code if you wanted to. But most of the time it's pretty smart and it does all this stuff for you. So you can just write development code and always, depending on the configuration, be sure that it's going to be production ready whenever you build it. So I'm going to pause and summarize the module bundling section. So we have module bundlers that will take in files, output a single kind of production ready golden file. It runs optimizations like unification, tree shaking, code splitting, things like that. All of that is to make that output file as small as possible and as efficient as possible for the browser to load. And then we can start up like a Webpack dev server, do hot reloads, and use import statements in our JavaScript code to get everything running. So we're done, right? We can build applications, everything's sorted, and we don't really need to do anything else. Well, as developers, we love to optimize. So it's not quite the case, because we can do better, or at least in my mind, we can do better. And that's where no module bundlers come in. So there's two big players in this space. There's Snowpack and Vite. I think it's pronounced Vite or Vite. Yeah, it's Vite. And both of these no module bundlers form around one kind of notion, and that's unbundled development. So you can take the example with a module bundler. If we make a file change, we build that one file, but then we still have to wait for the bundle to recompile. And in my Playground application, it was really fast. It was like hundreds of milliseconds. But this is a problem that I face at work. As the bundle size, or as the JavaScript size grows larger, the bundle recompilation time grows larger. So it becomes a big O of N time to actually recompile, which has been really painful if you just want to do a console log statement. You have to wait for a couple of seconds for everything to rebuild so you can actually just see what that console log statement is. But with a no module bundler, such as Snowpack or Vite, you build all the files, and then when one file changes, you just rebuild that one file. So for development, that's really, really fast, and you don't need to worry about spending that time waiting for that recompilation step. So essentially, Snowpack and Vite give the same support as module bundlers, so you can still use those import statements, and you can develop as you were developing with a module bundler, but it offers faster builds for development. And the key to all of this is that each file is built individually and then cached indefinitely. So this caching is really important, because when we run the Snowpack dev server, for example, it will build your JavaScript files and then also all of the node module files, and then it will just cache them. So you don't need to worry about having to rebuild them or rebundle them at any later stage. So that sounds great and all. And let's talk about like where the magic is. So Snowpack and Vite is kind of all built around ECMAScript, or also known as JavaScript modules. And that's this script type equals module that you can find here. Now, there's a couple of differences between this and the type equals like JavaScript, so like the default script type. And that is strict mode. So module types offer strict mode. They're executed once, so you can call it multiple times. They're only executed once. There's no global scope for these modules. So if you load up one of these things, you can't really access it anywhere outside of that script. And then it's deferred automatically. Now, how does Snowpack actually use this thing though? And I'm going to talk about Snowpack here because I haven't dug too much into it, but I assume it's roughly kind of the same. So let's talk about what that looks like, and let's dive into some more coding, but with Snowpack this time. And I'm pretty biased in like how much I love Snowpack. I just think it's like such a fun tool. So let me clear this. Let me zoom in a little bit more.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
have you had more experience with Snowpack or Webpack?
Yeah, great question. So I use Webpack at work, but I haven't dug into the Webpack config. I kind of just use it as an end user almost. Like I'm not something that I haven't like set it up or anything. But with Snowpack, I've set up small prototype apps. So again, I will talk about this in a little bit, but I haven't like dug into kind of the Snowpack config stuff. Yeah.
So you've done like greenfield projects
Yes.
with Snowpack and
Yes.
brownfield with Webpack.
Yeah. So I'll definitely
Nice.
I'll touch on that in a little bit. But yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, the reason I love Snowpack for greenfield projects, at least for prototyping, is it's really similar to how you would develop with a module bundler. So you can see I actually comment out the confetti for a reason, but I'm doing the same thing with the hello world, the same thing with the index.html, and the hello world thing is the same. So I'm going to start the Snowpack dev server, and we are going to inspect this. So Snowpack builds, at least my Snowpack config, my Snowpack config builds into a /dist folder, which is why I have dist/index. And if we have a look at this, this is nice because you don't have all the extra kind of magic comments that you see with Webpack. You just see your index.js file. And if you open up your dist folder, you can see this is like the hot module reload for CSS for Snowpack. You see like your hello world, everything is just there. And then if we have a look at our head, we can see that our CSS is just automatically compiled into our Snowpack, also into the head of our application. So that's all handled behind the scenes. So it's really nice. You can just code like you would normally code. And then you will see all the fun stuff. So if I change this, you can see there's already like hot module reload that exists. I didn't turn on verbose, but you can see like only this one file would change and build, so you don't need to worry about recompiling the whole bundle. And then the other really cool part about Snowpack is streaming imports. It's an experimental feature, but I really love it, and I think it's definitely something that is just going to get better in the future. So if I turn on this source remote option here, I can just import my confetti.js like so. I'm going to restart this server. Cool. And you can actually save this. Cool. And you can see here it imports confetti.js at latest from snowpack.dev or package.snowpack.dev. And you can see the confetti is coming onto my screen. Now, I didn't need to run any sort of npm install. Like if I have a look at my package.json, it's not a dev dependency anywhere. It's not a dependency anywhere. And that's really nice because one of the things with npm install that I found is sometimes I'll install one package and then like 300 packages later, my node module file is just huge. So this is great because this CDN points to Skypack. And Skypack offers a kind of pre-optimized, pre-bundled JavaScript package that you can just load up onto your site. And it doesn't just have confetti. You can load up React as a streaming import. So I can just import React as I would normally. And then I would replace the Skypack CDN with just React. And then I can just use that package within my code. And it's versioned always to the latest version. And if you wanted to, you can specify the dependencies via a separate like snowpack.deps file. If we have a look at the sources, the confetti package is actually found in Snowpack package confetti.js. And then if we have a look at index, we can see that the confetti generator, it replaces that, confetti.js with the file path to this. So that's kind of great for development. You can run Snowpack build to build for production, but there is one issue. So let me play this. Okay, cool. So when we switch to production, having unbundled development isn't always the best idea, because we do want to have kind of that optimized file that browsers can load rather than having like multiple bundles, especially if it's like a older browser. We don't have this access to type equals module. So with Snowpack and with Vite, you can actually use a module bundler to do that for you. So you can combine the power of both. Essentially, it's saying that like production, whenever you want to build for production, that's when you can opt into a bundler. Snowpack, you can choose your own. With Vite, it uses Rollup as a module bundler. And there's a bunch more like templates like this. So I know Create React App is a template, and that's built around Webpack. Snowpack has a bunch of other templates as well, like Preact React. And you can see a little bit more about how that all works. So any questions before I quickly summarize the high level Snowpack stuff? Okay, cool. So no module bundlers based around no module bundler. It's based around unbundled development. We build all the files once, we cache them indefinitely. So that means that when we make a change, we only change that one file. And it's all kind of based around this type equals module. By having that, we get the opportunity to import these modules for kind of newer browsers. And finally, when we want to build for production, we can just use a module bundler and do that building for us. So I have one more take, and that's it for my slides. So my take on the future of tooling, and I don't know how true this is, and this is probably just a lukewarm take. I think module bundlers are just going to get better, especially as we just get newer and newer browsers, and they kind of support like more features in these browsers. I think streaming imports is going to be huge for development, and potentially also for production as well, because running npm install is like just not fantastic. And I think module bundlers are going to get better in terms of like configurations and like setup in a lot of ways. So like Nick said, Webpack 3 to 4 has already changed a lot about the configuration. Parcel has been a huge component of like pushing for no config module bundling. I do think like Webpack, you do need a module bundler to build for all the browsers, and that can be kind of where we find this issue where like kind of more brown, like older applications will still be using Webpack. Any new applications might be using Snowpack or no module bundling, but then you get into that issue where you have lots of configuration to handle, and I'm not entirely sure who's going to win out. I would think that if you're kind of building new things, you would pick a no module bundler, and then as that grows, you would kind of start tweaking that no module bundler, and eventually it might just handle all of that tooling for you, all that building for production for you, and you don't even need to worry about like what Webpack looks like behind the scenes. So that's all I have. Thank you. Any
I had a question, John.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the answer to this or not. I haven't used Snowpack. I've just read up on it and watched some videos about it.
Yeah.
But with the like typically like in a bundling system, we have the packages in the package.json file, and you'd say like React version 17, for example. Yep. If you're doing the streaming import, can you say at version, or because I imagine if you leave just the name, it'll always grab the latest, which could potentially cause issues?
Yep, 100%. Yes, you can. So with Snowpack, I don't know if it has this, but Snowpack has this snowpack.deps.json, and you can use that to manage your dependencies for streaming imports.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Cool. I think Mike was next.
Yeah, this is a really good talk. That was really good. Thank you.
Oh,
Like, I feel
thanks.
like yeah, you summarized like kind of all the questions I had around like Webpacker and Snowpack and all that other stuff, and it's done it really well. The question I've got is how can I use Snowpack with Rails? Is there like a way to do that right now, or is it kind of a bit fiddly?
Yeah, so I looked it up. It's a little bit fiddly. So there's a Snowpack Rails gem that kind of replaces the Webpack stuff, but Webpack is pretty well integrated with Rails, so I think it is kind of fiddly to like do that switch. Yeah, I know with Phoenix it's been a little bit annoying as well because you have to find the right places to hook into the build step, and then that unbundled development might be a bit of an issue.
Cool, awesome. Thank you.
I had another question. You had the main entry point there, like the main.js, but I imagine Snowpack, even though it's a no bundler, it supports multiple entry points, I imagine.
Yeah. So I believe it does. I need to double check the config. But I believe you can have like sub modules and stuff like that if you want to have multiple kind of entry points.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Let me get back to you on that one. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. No, I was just curious. I feel like it probably does it because that's a pretty common thing in Webpack. So
Yeah, this was, I'm one of those people who just avoided anything about bundling because I'm like, this is very complex. I don't understand. I don't want to break it, but I'm just gonna let it do its thing. If someone already set it up, great. And so like this was like a really solid intro. I think I have two questions. First is just like a clarifying one to make sure I understand. So the advantage of Snowpack is that it's gonna do all the files individually and sort of like cache them individually. So instead of doing like the massive compiles of Webpack, it'll just, like if you change one file, it'll just have to recheck that one file. So let's say I was a very, very bad developer and I just decided to write like everything in a single file. I'm assuming like then I would see like diminishing performance advantages from Snowpack because at that point like it's not that much different. Like the advantage is if you have your code spread over like multiple files and modules, that's like the more you have that, the better it is.
Yeah, I would say if you just have one file and you're just rebuilding that one file all the time, then you're probably not going to see that much benefit. Yeah, especially if it's I don't know. I can't say that being like the best performance thing. I can imagine if like you wanted to break up, like I know React has like multiple components. I think it's kind of built for that kind of like mindset. Then that's what you're kind of seeing those performance increases.
Okay. I guess my second question was just, I think you said that, so if you need to, you can tell Snowpack to essentially do something like the module bundles, right? So if I understand it, if I use Snowpack, I have the option of doing like no module or module. But if I'm just using Webpack, then it's my only option is like a module approach. So I might as well just try Snowpack.
Yeah, I mean I'm pretty biased, so I'd say yes because I really enjoy using it for development. Snowpack actually has an experimental bundler with ES Build, which is apparently super fast. It has like some stats on its website that, I mean, assuming its website's correct, it's way faster than any of the other module bundlers out there. So you can kind of use that natively, and it seems to work really, really well for greenfield apps.
Okay, last question, and this is the part where I guess I'm the most confused. So we were looking at sort of like running libraries and packages without having to go through npm install. But that means that they're not showing up in our package.json. So when you're switching from like development to production mode, like let's say somebody else wants to like run our thing or like do a similar setup, how do they get access to like that info? Like if I'm getting it from Skypack
Skypack, yeah.
through Snowpack, like how do they see that through the packs?
Yeah. So you're asking if you were like just getting someone else to run this application on their machine, like how do they see those packages? Yeah, it always pulls from the Skypack CDN. It doesn't have, it's at least not yet. They're planning to add features where you can point to different CDNs, but right now it's always Skypack. So if you have set up the deps, the snowpack.deps.json file, you can specify the version of that package. And then they would see that by, you can browse, go into the inspect element, and you can see kind of the sources being pulled in, and you can go into that package, or just go to Skypack and find that package.
So I would find it in the Snowpack dependency package, not my regular package.json.
That's right.
Okay. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries. Oh, but the idea is they don't need to run npm install. They can just start the app, and then it will just be there.
But yeah, I'm super excited about that because I hate npm install.
Yeah.
I literally made a meme about that a few days ago.
But that is pretty huge though, not installing all the modules, because like, I mean, just think about people have varying internet speeds, and a lot of it is also the module bundling tooling a lot of times. And if you don't need that and you're just pulling out the dependencies as you need them, that's like pretty big. That's like a huge win for like a developer experience, I would say. And it's cool to say Snowpack. Yo, what's up, Snowpack?
Justin?
Snowpack is not cool. I mean, the term. We have too much snow here. Sorry.
Okay, my question, well, first, again, great talk. How does a bundler know what to code split? So, how does it know that, on this route, I need this, and on that one, I need this, and I don't get that.
Yeah, so there's something called dynamic imports that you can use. So I don't have a code example on hand, but there's this idea you add some extra syntax to a piece of code that you want to be split out, and you would, it's like inlining an import into your code rather than having like a top level import statement at the top of the file. And by doing so, the bundler will be able to pull that code out into a separate kind of file and then run that import whenever you actually go through that code path. So that's like a really, really high level how it actually like finds that, like, I think it finds every single like import statement and like builds its tree that way. And I think it must do something special on the dynamic import.
Okay, and then one more question. One thing that would worry me about Snowpack then is that because you're not doing an npm install and getting it from node modules, you can't run things like patch package then, can you?
I'm not sure what patch package does.
Like say there's a package out there that you use, but there's a bug in it. And they're not going to update it for weeks and weeks, and somebody's already got a PR for it, and you're just waiting, and you got to have it. So you can import a patch package or create your own, and it will modify the npm module to fix the bug for you, just you, and anybody else that uses your repository. And then it will build it with your fix in it, and now you don't have to wait for the maintainer to solve the problem. So it looks like since Skypack's kind of already pre-built, then you're just stuck with whatever bugs exist in the current version.
Right, yeah, and I don't know if you can have both Skypack imports and also run like your local no module imports. So that's something that we definitely need to look into as well. So yeah, that's a really good point.
I don't know about anybody else, but that, Justin, what you just said sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really
so
handy.
many times it's been my problem. And I have to, you get to like, I've been just like manually. Anyway, we should definitely talk more about that because that sounds super cool.
All right,
Um,
I'll throw a brown bag request up for it later.
yes, I love this so much. Okay, so we are just about at 12:55 EST right now. So I want to just quickly do the sort of roundup and thank Jonathan so much for this talk. This was really informative, and I think everybody got a lot out of it. I certainly feel way more comfortable about these things, which is what I love about brown bags. It's like I don't have to go all or nothing and try and figure out which YouTube tutorial is going to make sense. You know, it's like a friend telling me. And I'm really excited to try Snowpack now. So I really appreciate it. Just to let people know, I think Monday, Gant is doing a brown bag on publishing, especially publishing in the tech space with O'Reilly. So that's going to be super exciting, just to let people know about that, since I won't see you all before that. And yeah, Jonathan, thank you again for an absolutely amazing job. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for
Yeah,
watching.
thanks,
everyone.
Jana.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, man.
Now
Thanks,
I want
everyone.
to stop and record.